So here we go. We are starting a series on cultivation. And the cultivation series is going to be based on using our breath work and using our meditation. Traditionally, we do three things. You physically move every day, you stand every day, and then you do seated meditation every day. And those are considered the three treasures of moving, standing, and sitting, which is considered the components of the Immortals Elixir. And the Immortals Elixir is all about the cultivation of consciousness. There's systems of meditation, yoga, and Tai Chi, all with the intention of aligning the mind, or let's say the consciousness, the energy, and the body, Jing, Qi, and Shen. And we purify the body through physical movement. So some of us are into meditation. You're like, wow, I want to learn meditation. I want to learn breath work. That's good. But if you think you're just going to go into meditation and be met with success, it's usually very frustrating, and because you're missing some components. And what we want to share with you in this series is how to effectively create tranquility and clarity so that you can actually identify the constant. Tranquility and clarity, the constant, is actually a very famous Taoist scripture. And the theory is this, I guess to put it in like Western terms, your body would be kind of looked at as a glass, and it's fragile, it's unique, and it's impermanent. So it's this beautifully, let's say, carved crystal glass, all right? That's the body or the vessel. Your energy is water. So you take the energy, pour it in the glass. Now it's finite, and it's going to slowly evaporate. And if you break the glass, it'll just pour right out. And then the consciousness is represented by a diamond. So this is the eternal consciousness. It's always been you, it's always been now, and you've always been here. The diamond. So you take the glass, it's in good order, no cracks, it's a good vessel. Okay, then energy comes into the glass. Then, okay, now we can actually hold, we have the temple. Now we drop the diamond in. As soon as that diamond hits the water and sinks to the bottom, mind movement begins, which will be represented as like a big pinch of dirt. Drop that in. And stir, movement of mind. So then your kind of self-concept is a turbid glass of water, really fragile, impermanent, and evaporating. It almost creates a sense of anxiety. So that's the human condition. So the theory is you take the glass, set it down so it's tranquil. Don't stir. Pull the swizzle stick out, if you will, and then just watch it. And as it starts to slow down and ultimately stop the movement, the turbidity, the mind movement, the dirt drops to the bottom, and the diamond is revealed. And to see the diamond once, according to the Taoist tradition, an immortal is born. Meaning you realize, oh, wow, I am not the glass, which is totally impermanent. I am not the water, which is constantly being depleted. I am the immortal, eternal diamond. And that's what they mean by an immortal is born, because you realize, oh, wow, I'm infinite consciousness momentarily residing in form. And if you can kind of even get a sense of that, you might not know it completely. It might not be crystal clear in your mind. It might not be in the front of your mind, which is a whole other practice that we call Bao Yi, cherishing the one. Because once you realize and see the one, keeping to the one is the trick. That is where self-mastery comes from. But even if not, you're just, wow, I got a glimpse of the nature of mind. Well, that creates a North Pole, or let's say a constant. What does a constant do? Well, if you're really dizzy and spinning in a world of chaos, if you can keep your eye on one spot, you won't fall over. So in life, especially nowadays, it seems more than ever, there's like crazy, constant uncertainty, instability, and change, which we could talk about later, how that affects consciousness. But then it creates anxiety and fear and grief and all kinds of, let's say, aggression. You're seeing it play out in the world we live in. And that's because there is no constant. Well, you can find the constant, you could try to find it in your life outside, in your government, in your work, in your family, in your business. Yeah, but those are really unstable and they're subject to other people's karma. If you can find the constant inside, that one piece that never changes, now you have control of that sense of inner peace and stability. And that would have to be, from my experience, the most beneficial aspect of all cultivation is to create that one point that's in you. It's always been you. You've always been here, and it's always been now. And that's revealed when we see the constant. So cultivation is all about trying to reveal this constant I am, which then gives us a greater sense of, let's say, grace. You know, you can be graceful in this world. You have peace. We always talk about the components, what we need. And, you know, in order to have that peace, in order to not be tormented, if you will, by the outside world, it's an equation. It's not luck. These are key things. It's like a retirement portfolio. You don't get lucky. You put it together. You know, it's baking a cake. There's no luck in baking. It's exact or it doesn't work at all. You know, it's a science. So the first thing you need to do is have the ability to basically experience pleasure, to be pleasant. And it's hard to be pleasant and experience pleasure if you're physically and mentally and emotionally in a state of turmoil and torment. So the first thing we work on is, hey, yes, we're going to sit, we're going to meditate, we're going to do breath work, but don't discount the need for, like in yoga, they call it asana. When they talk about the 8 limbs of yoga, well, you have to move. Why do we have to move? As in order to successfully cultivate and to successfully meditate. Because you can't go from everything to nothing. You can't. You think you can, but you can't. So it's like, okay, I'm thinking about everything, I'm doing everything, and now nothing. Well, it's not that easy. It's like going, you know, you're in 3rd gear and now you're going to put it in reverse. It doesn't end well. So we want to go from like everything to something to one thing to nothing. Now we can back into it as opposed to hoping I can sit here for a few minutes and experience that tranquility. Well, it might work, might not work. And what does ensure the fact that it will work is, how do I first create that pleasantness? The pleasantness comes from removing cellular memory, which is another thing we're going to go into in this whole series. So it's not as simple as just doing breath work. There's prep work involved. So clearing cellular memory is a lot to do with physical movement. Now, you might not have a practice. Some of these people don't have practice. Well, then walk, hike, especially up and down hills if you have a park or mountains. Maybe you do yoga. You know, maybe you do Tai Chi. You know, maybe even do, I don't know, PX 27 or whatever those things. They have all of these work. I don't know, whatever your bag is, but move. Why? Because if we look at the nature of that glass, you know, the body, there's a thing called cellular memory. And as you go through your day, you experience these emotions. So when you experience, according to traditional Chinese medicine, when you experience, let's say, anger, aggression, and rage, it's literally stored in the liver, okay? The peptides, the cellular memory in the liver, okay? You experience anxiety, it's stored in the heart. You experience fear, it's stored in the kidneys, worry in the spleen, and grief in the lungs. So you go through this day and you experience grief, and it's all there, and you cope with the situation. And it's like cleaning up the mess in aisle 4, if you will, you know. And now you got this dirty washcloth called your lungs that just cleaned up grief, and your liver that just cleaned up aggression. Well, it's there. And now you're going to try to sit. And all of a sudden, it comes to the forehead screen. These emotions bubble up, false thoughts and imputations. They're not coming from nowhere. So then your mind is being, let's say, tormented by this data and its images. And the images create inner commentary. You see the image, you start talking about the image in your head. And then it gets worse. If the images are consistent and loud enough and disturbing enough, you'll say them. So now it went from an image to a word. And now it's going to get worse. You'll do it. So now it went from a thought to a word, to an action. So that's how this turbidity happens. So when we work out, whether again, ride a bike, I prefer Tai Chi or yoga or something like that, whatever your background is, clear it out. It's like wringing out, because you're twisting, you're turning, you're lifting. Something to consider. Just walking, good though, up and down, you're pumping all of your interstitial fluids through because you're flexing your calves and your thighs and glutes and quads and all of that. We're squeezing the lymph, cellular waste, okay, up through into the lungs and out. You're removing the crazy that's stored in your body because you're doing something. You're applying yourself. Again, one of the observations I find interesting is if you look at anytime someone talks to God in the book, like the Old Testament and things like that, they always have to climb a damn mountain or go out into the desert. Something that's going to be a stressor, that's going to put them through something, that's going to create like a cleansing. Because to walk up to that mountain, by the time you get to the top of that mountain, you pumped everything out. Whatever crazy you had in the valley, it's long gone by the time you get to the summit. And so that's how then you can see clearly. So that's something that you really need to consider if you really want to cultivate and you really want to have success with your meditation. You have to become pleasant so you're not being tormented. And until you're pleasant, you won't be peaceful because you'll be kind of anxiety ridden. People bounce their legs. They do all, they smoke their cigarettes. Whatever they can do to stop the crazy show in their head. There's no inner peace whatsoever, but you have to be pleasant. You have to be able to experience pleasure before you can be peaceful. Then you can drop in. Okay, so that's something we have to consider when we start our journey in personal cultivation. Once we get to the point where we've done that, now we can work on, okay, I'm going to sit. So let's talk a little bit about sitting because I know everybody here is interested in cultivation. That's why you're watching this. You can do it many ways. You could sit in a chair. You can do this lying down. I get it. But if we can sit like a mountain, you'll automatically tell your body it's okay. So what do I mean by that? Well, when I'm sitting here right now, there's a few key things that I'm doing very deliberately. And number one, you can make the big investment and get yourself a silly yoga blanket, okay? And you sit on that yoga blanket with your sits bones so that your tailbone is as high or higher than your heels. That's going to take a lot of unnecessary pressure off your hips and knees because the sitting is imperative. Now, if you can only sit in a chair, that's great too. Sit on the edge of the chair with the bottoms of the feet, kidney one, they call it. These are acupoints, grounded, so that you're stable. And make sure your knees are wider than your shoulder when you sit there. What does this do? Well, so I've got my tailbone in, so we're getting set up for this whole process, okay? And every time we sit and meditate, we set our body up so it's conductive. So the tailbone is grounding right now into the earth. It's a Hoi-Yin is the name of the point, okay? It's basically at the perineum. And then sometimes it's hard to get your legs in like this. So what I recommend initially is you set yourself up, take your left heel right here and bring it to your pubic bone, technically your perineum, to lock. So the gate of life and death is plugged, okay? And notice though, bilaterally, right there, you can look this up, ST or stomach 36, Zunali, it's right here. These are two little points. Okay, so I've got the Hoi-Yin grounded. Then I take this one and it's grounded. And that might be all you can do right now. And this is cool too, this will work. And then it's like, okay, the pressures. Now this one, I see too many people like this. You're not going to have a lot of success meditating like this. It's terrible. So you got to drop it, okay? Like let your body drop in. Get this grounded. Then take the other one and put it right near your shin. Don't try to go all full lotus so that you could if you can do it comfortably. Now stomach 36, and Hoi-Yin are grounded. Positive, negative, neutral. I've just plugged into the earth, like plugging into an outlet. And the earth has this, the three. That's right. Neutral, positive, and negative. Drop in. So now there's this ascending electromagnetic pole coming up like this from the earth. And we know this. Now, in the old days, it was just like magic, earth chi is coming up. Well, no, we just know it's an actual phenomenon and there's an electromagnetic pole. And we're grounding into this thing because often we don't. So, okay, I've just grounded. This is good. I'm not feeling as unstable. If something is unstable, it's turbid. If something is stable, it's tranquil. So I'm physically, my knees are wider than my shoulders. Okay, I'm creating the most stable structure on the planet, a pyramid, right? Head, shoulders, knees. Now, if I sit like this, we're hacking into the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous systems, right? We're telling the body, hey, this is not fight or flight. This is rest or repair, replace, restore. So automatically, you drop in. The mind will slowly become more quiet. Now, don't get me wrong. If it's uncomfortable, it'll take time, but ultimately the mind will become more tranquil. So here we sit. So this is setting me up. Next step. By waypoints, like the opposite point of Hoi Yin, by waypoint, right at the top. Take your fingertips, touch the tips of your ears, reach straight up, right where they meet. That's the point. So don't sit like this. Sit like that so that the spine is lifted. Chin is slightly down like you're squeezing an apple. Shoulders drop. So now all of a sudden, now I'm creating this lightning rod. Okay? So this has got the descending heavenly energy hitting, coming down into the body, straight down. Then I have the ascending electromagnetic energy of the earth itself. Okay, I'm connected. The body is way more conducive. Just setting yourself up. A lot of times, that's why, again, in yoga and in Bagua and these oriental cultivation arts and stuff, they make you do it because you have to sit there sometimes for 2 hours. And the average person, it's really painful. So they do all the work on the joints and they make sure the meridians themselves, the nadis and marma points, whatever, are open so that you're not experiencing, oh man, my legs are falling asleep, or adhesions because my body's in the wrong position. So getting the body conducive is really, really important. So we have this setup. That's like the first step. Hands. There's so many mudra that we can do with the hands, okay? What I recommend, the easiest one is simply take your thumb and touch the finger, right? Like that. Like, okay. Well, what's happening is we're grounding the metal element. Later we'll learn maybe about the large intestine lung meridians. But that's metal is obviously highly conductive to electric. Well, electric is considered the heavenly energy, so we have this conductive posture. Okay? You could sit like that. If that's uncomfortable, just sit like this. Sit any way you want, for that matter. But if you're looking for what do I do with my hands, that's a basic way. Palms up, like that. So just getting the sitting posture is important. Another piece of advice as we start our journey, because this is going to be, 6-part series on how to do this. So we're going to go into setup. Try to spend at least a half hour a day on the ground. Okay? Because it's like, oh, I'm meditating, so I'm in this awkward situation where I'm sitting on the ground. No, it's got to be natural. It's kind of like a conversation with someone you love, someone you really know. It's just natural. Whereas if it's like an interview or, I don't know, first date or something, you're all weird and awkward and don't know what to say and you snort when you laugh and you do all the wrong things, right? It's terrible. Well, we have to have a natural relationship with this experience. So what I always recommend to my clients is, hey, spend a half hour a day on the ground. You'll live longer because just the physically being on the ground is excellent for your body. B, it drops you in and grounds you nicely. And in this case, C, it becomes something you're just familiar with. You'll sit like this anyways, and when you're on your device or eating a meal, reading a book, watching a movie, or talking to someone. See if you could spend more time sitting on the ground. Go home, burn your chairs, sit on the ground. Not the most practical advice, but you see what I'm saying? Try. Set up a little spot maybe in your living room or whatever. Make a cloud, as we call it, a comfortable pad or something that then, sit on the blanket, elevate. This is where I sit. This is my safe zone. This is my comfort. This is my magic cloud, whatever you want to call it. Your throne. Who cares? Do something. But make it, this is where I sit and I like it here. And as soon as I sit here, I know everything's okay. It's like this is when my ritual to become tranquil, to relax, to be pleasant, to be peaceful. So that's like really a key piece is find your throne, if you will, okay? It'll take time, but after a while, you won't, it'll be more natural. And ideally, you'll be like, look, I know when I sit, that's when I'm regaining. It's almost like you're going to sleep, okay? Sitting is a very important piece of this whole process. So we've lined ourselves up. 1, 2, 3, lift the head and set. One of the goals now is to say, okay, I've created a tranquil space so that I can start accessing this clarity. So let's talk about that, because one of the key steps that comes next is sealing the 5 senses. So we need to kind of introduce you to the concept of data, especially random data, just random data coming in. And it's like we don't turn off, this inbound turbidity and crazy. So what you see, you look at it and it creates all kinds of inner commentary. So we really need to close that. They call that sealing the 5 thieves, because they take energy from you. Seal the 5 to activate the 6th sense, the sense that's aware of the 5, and all your work is done. So no eyes, they say. When we do the no eyes, what you want to do is, what I find, if you close your eyes, you can still see images. So that doesn't work too well, because now all that, remember we talked about the cellular memory and the story that you stored from earlier that day, it's playing on your forehead screen. So if we can seal the eyes, and how do we do it? There's a trick, okay? We establish the bamboo slits. So your eyes are barely open where you can't really see anything outside. But there's enough light coming in that it burns, it creates like a white, burns out the forehead screen. There's too much light. It's like when you're trying to look at your phone in the sun and you can't see it. It's like that idea. So not closed, not open. If they're open, you're randomly looking around. Don't do that. If they're completely closed, guess what? Inner vision is tormenting you. So the first step is use the 2 bamboo slits. The eyes are barely open. And try, and this is an interesting thing, because you can also, if you get good at this, you don't even have to close your eyes. And this is called the gazing method, where you take your right eye and look at your right ear. You take your left eye and you look at your left ear. And what happens is, give it a try, you're not looking at anything. It's like you're just looking through. You're daydreaming. You'll notice that when you daydream, you're like that. During the day, we're like this. We triangulate. We're constantly measuring the distance between, that and what we want to kill, I guess. Or, it's like, haha, and eyebrows are down. And the energy is just pouring out right here because you're looking. And you get fatigued and you'll literally go, oh, God. Right. Because you're just pouring all the energy out of the forehead, the third eye. So no, open it up. Right eye, right ear, left eye, left ear, and just chill. Very important piece, okay? So no eyes. In other words, no data gathering. The sensory organ of the eyes is now turning off the outside world. We're not being tormented by involuntarily taking in random data. Turn it off. So you start eyes barely open and then just kind of look to the side. And that's how we start no eyes. No tongue. Okay, so we're working on getting set up for our cultivation. So this class is just going to be, how do we set ourselves up? We're not even going into the meditation yet. We're going into everything we need to create an environment conducive to tranquility and clarity. No eyes, no tongue. No tongue. So the tongue's on the roof of the mouth, right behind the teeth. No tongue meaning no inner dialogue, no inner commentary. Well, and obviously no speaking, right? You're not going to pick up the phone or talk to your cat or something. No tongue. Don't talk. Okay? No eyes, no tongue, tongue on the roof of the mouth, no inner commentary. So when you're sitting there, and if you find yourself talking about, oh, wow, this feels weird looking at my right eye, my left, no tongue, no inner commentary, no voice, internal, external, no eyes, no tongue, no mouth. So you'll notice that people have what they call the resting bitch face, right? It's the downward frown. Because they're kind of unconscious and it's actually showing you how they feel. It's not a good look. So what we want to do is, do you remember how we took the right eye and looked at the right ear and the left eye and the left ear? Well, the same thing. You take the right corner and lift towards the earlobe, left corner, broaden and lift slightly. It's the Buddha smile or the Mona Lisa smile. And so you're being very mindful and you're not moving the body at all. So when we also say no mouth, that also belongs to what they call the earth element in the Oriental medicine, which is also governs the muscles. So we're just no movement whatsoever. No eyes, no tongue, no mouth. Next, no nose. So what do they mean by that? We want to, once we're really sitting, and we're going to work into this, and we call this stone breathing, and I'll go into it in great detail as we go through our journey here. But try to, if you will, once we're done with all our breath work and we're settled in, pretend that you have a feather hanging from the tip of your nose. And when you inhale, the breath is so thin, so long, so fine, so complete, so deep, it doesn't even move. And when you exhale, it's so slender, so complete, so long, it doesn't move. So you're kind of no nose. You're sitting there like a stone. So if someone were to come to you, they wouldn't see your lungs moving, your chest. They wouldn't see anything. It's like, you're in a pretty deep state right there. Very important piece. No eyes, no random data, no tongue, no internal dialogue, no mouth, obviously no speaking, but really like no movement of the face or the muscles. No nose. Okay. The interesting piece about the nose, too, is your emotions are directly connected to your nose. So your lungs and nose are in the same circuit. And the lungs are how we reveal our emotional state. So if it's funny, you laugh. If it's sad, you cry. One of the easiest ways to regulate your emotions is regulating your breath. So if you really want to calm the emotions, still the emotions, then still the breath. No eyes, no tongue, no mouth, no nose. And then finally, this one almost happens organically, no ears. And so what happens is you stop listening. So if you're totally focused on everything, you'll hear nothing. All right. I experience this every day with my kid. It's like, he's on this silly tablet, he's doing Minecraft, and you're like, all right, it's time. You got to eat your vegetables, or we got to get our shoes on. The bus is coming. He doesn't hear you. He doesn't hear you. You've got to shake him, and that's what happens. If you focus these four senses on one thing, your ears turn off. And that's a good indication. That's the last thing to go. Okay. And so no ears, we're falling away. That's how we set ourselves up. Correct posture. And then no eyes, no tongue on the roof of the mouth, no mouth, no nose, no ears. Seal the five senses. And then what happens is we're no longer just taking in random data from the outside world. We're going inside now. And what happens is, even though you've turned off these five senses, you still exist. Because what are you left with? This sense, the sixth sense, the sense that's aware of the senses. Now we're getting closer to the eternal observer, not the random outside world and all the crazy data that comes with it, and all the false thoughts, imputations, and stuff that you think is you and you think is your life. You're not the stuff. You're aware of it. There's an I amness that's aware of it. You know, what is it? Descartes. I think, therefore I am. Very great, you know, very intelligent human being. But I don't know if he nailed that, because you're not your thoughts. You're that which is aware of your thoughts. So there's like a little minor adjustment that I really recommend you consider. And so by giving yourself a break of the five, you'll realize there's the six. The sixth sense is the aware of the five senses. That's where we want to be, where we're no longer being inundated by the outside crazy world. We're giving ourselves a pattern interrupt, a break. I mean, that's why you have to sleep. It's more important to sleep than to eat. You know, you have to sleep because you have to turn it off so that you can sort out this crazy turbidity and let it kind of, all right, this is an important piece. Oh, let this go. Oh, this is all this data needs to be sorted out. And then the body needs, of course, to be resting and repairing and replacing cells. So this is a form. Sleeping is technically unconscious meditation, and meditation is conscious sleeping. Yeah, and if you know that, you can actually say, look, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling tired. I'm starting to feel sick. I'm starting to feel stressed. Well, you know what? Sit. That 20 minutes of sitting is really powerful medicine. And that's where we want to get with all of these. So once we get ourselves in this posture and we seal the five senses, we must get used to it. And I recommend when you sleep, and this is what, you know, we're going to kind of finish with today is, but when you sleep and when you lie down, that's what you do. No eyes, no tongue, no mouth, no nose, no ears. Just turn it off. Like mindfully, like remind yourself to take these senses and power them down. All this data, outside world gathering info, turn it off. And then let your body just kind of drop in and just be aware of awareness. And that's a real powerful one. I use it a lot with clients to help them sleep. And that's called sealing the five to activate the sixth. Something to consider. I'll get a little heavy on you now because I know that wasn't heavy at all, was it? Okay. Tranquility, grace at the moment of death. Like my grandmaster used to always say this, and some of you know and some of you don't know, but I've had an opportunity to train with some very powerful grandmasters, you know, since I was young, like in my 20s, before that as a teen. And one of my grandmasters would always ask me, so what does that have to do with the hour of your death? And I'd be like, what? Because I was a meathead and I'd ask really stupid questions. And it was all about having the state. It's like, you know, you don't die and go to hell, you bring hell with you. You don't die and go to heaven, you bring heaven with you. So what state, what kind of baggage do you have? Can you just drop the mic and walk away? Or are you hanging on? Are you the tormented? That's what brings you back. Can you leave with no resistance, no attachment, no judgment? Drop the mic, don't look over your shoulder, and leave. Well, you got to practice that. And so when we seal the five and you're lying there, the first thing that happens is your eyes close during that hour of death. Then the speech stops. Then the physical movement stops. The breath stops. And the last thing to go is the hearing. So you practice taking off the body every day and regularly. Every day and regularly. You're familiar with shutting it down. Shutting it down. Very important piece so that you're not experiencing the trauma. No. That's, very important piece. You can research the Diamond Sutra speaks into that, that the whole thing is about that, sealing the five. So every time we meditate, we're kind of like getting used to kind of ejecting the consciousness out of the body and still existing outside of the body. So it's very heavy, and I get that. But what that does is it creates space. The world gets kind of crazy, and you got to passionately get involved because we're here for a reason, and show up, play hard. But at the end of the day, it is a game. And at the end of the day, you are an observer. So creating the space between your life situation, your story, and you. And so every time we do this, we want to go into a state of nothing, no memory, no future, no past, just now. And that's a tough one, because that past, you don't want to bring that with you. The past is good for two things: information and entertainment. That's it. So sometimes when we're sitting here and we start doing this work, you might have these reoccurring stories that show up. That's a ghost. Don't do that. So we'll learn to slowly, and we'll go through a process on how we can remove that, because you don't want to bring that with you. You want to leave that right here. Drop the baggage. So we practice that. Stop the data, clear out the waste. As we go through this process, you will be introduced to this is all based on the Donghan Taoist clan. This Korean Taoist is based on Oriental medicine. And a big part of Oriental medicine, once you learn the 5 elements, which are directly tied, by the way, eyes belong to wood. Wood creates fire, which is the tongue, and the tongue creates earth, which is the mouth, and the earth creates metal, which is the nose, and from metal you have water, which is the ears. We literally do this in a specific order as it relates to the cycle of creation. Yeah, so it's really nothing random here. This isn't something I just made up. This is just how it's been done for 4,200 years in our lineage. So I'm giving the direct transmission. I didn't learn this in Sedona at a workshop, or I didn't Google it or look it up in YouTube. So I learned it from my teachers. Now I'm teaching you. And so hopefully you can have that, really powerful transformational experience. But if we can come away with, in lesson number 1, how to sit, how to set ourselves up, how to ground ourselves, the importance of sitting, some of the key components in sitting. And then we can say, okay, this is how I seal the 5 senses. These are the 5 senses. This is the importance of turning the data off. Master that, so we can start to drop into the 6th sense, the sense that's aware of the senses. If you can walk away in lesson 1, in this first part, knowing that, think about this stuff too, as opposed to randomly thinking about the chaos world we live in, or bills that need to be paid, or your story, she never loved you, or whatever the hell it is. No, if your mind's going to ruminate, contemplate the Tao, contemplate something kind of cool and inspiring and, interesting and positive. You'll dump dopamine, like the chemicals will be better. Very seldom does the mind wander into a good place, left unattended. Very few of us just sit around with inspiring thoughts. So then you have to train your mind and now think about that. And so if you're like studying this and you're really trying to figure it out, then you're going to start looping, because that's what the mind does anyways. At least you're using the mind's random, I want to stay on and toil, in a positive way. You're like, okay, if you're going to sit here and keep churning, churn on this. And so it's another form of active Shan meditation, where you deliberately seed your thoughts. So your contemplation, we use 3 things in our lineage, the 3 tools, and that's observation, contemplation, and meditation. Yeah. And so we observe the way of the universe and the Tao, then we contemplate. We're contemplating now. We're talking about it. Okay. I'm like, look, do this. There's the 5. Check this out. Good. Contemplation, we're looking. Then observation, see it in your world. It's like, yeah, wow, that's pretty consistent. Oh, there's some truth there. The root power shows up in 10,000 places. Look for it. The Tao, where's Waldo? Everywhere. See it. Yeah. So the contemplation, observation, the meditation, remember it and keep to it. So we have this lesson. We contemplate the lesson. Now we're going to observe. So teaching you how to become a cultivator. These are the things we must use. We contemplate the Tao. We observe it in action. So it's not just knowledge. It becomes wisdom because we can see it working. And then we remember it. We keep to it. If we can pull that off, now you're more than just doing some breath work, being a meditator, you're a cultivator, because we're meditating to cultivate tranquility and clarity, to establish a relationship with the constant. It's always been you, it's always been now, and you've always been here. And this is the doorway. So that's lesson 1, and we'll continue with the next step next time.